Hi guys, this is Chris here from Scale Model Wheels and Design. We received another request this time asking how to scale a tyre for our rims. So this one here, it can be a little bit tricky as there's obviously a variety of different things and different ways in which people use the files. But let's just go on in and open up our free tyre. So this is our low profile tyre that's available on our Colts page, and you'll see it's it's quite a nice looking tyre. Now this has been designed specifically with a 100mm internal sizing, so you will see it actually measures 116.21 and 50.46, and that is the width plus, I suppose, it's that little bit of branding on the side that sort of bumps it out past that 50. Remembering our standard wheels are 100 by 50 millimeters in size. So having a look at this one, if we were to simply place it on the build plate, center it, and we open up a rim, and do the same thing, you will see that it pretty well fits in relatively nicely. So you'll see that there's no gap. That could be saved as a single file and then printed. Now, some people will actually print the tyres and rims as one piece, and I need it to be able to work that way. You know, we can't have gaps if someone is going to simply put the two together, save it as new file, print it as is. Now, if you wanted them as a one piece and then paint them painstakingly, the tyre set like while it's on the rim, you could certainly do so. So that's the first point of call, and it's the reason why we've designed it that way with a 100mm internal, so the rim will simply work. Now, fully understand that that's not going to suit everyone, as majority of people, I would think, would have the tyre separate to the rim. So what we do, depending on the scale, obviously a larger scale, there is a small tolerance. The smaller the scale, however, that tolerance will need to be increased. So, for instance, if we're talking a millimeter difference in a larger scale, that millimeter is actually going to be quite a large gap when you start reducing to that for instance, 164, which is one of the scales that I personally sort of deal in. So I have watched people do it digitally. For instance, we have got it all lined up once again. Click on the tyre, and then we're making that little bit bigger. So say, for instance, we make it, I don't know, let's do 0.5. And of course it didn't work. All right, so let's go to that. For some reason that didn't take, but I'm going to do the 0.5 again and see if it works. And why isn't that working? Okay, that's not really enough. If we did 101%, for some reason my computer does not like me today. There you go, 101. All right, you will see when I zoom in, there is now a visual gap between the rim and the tyre. Now, as I said, I've seen people do this and they can get things really, really close. So they know in their experience that if they print the rim and the tyre separately, there is going to be enough clearance to be able to, for that rim to be able to move within the tyre, but not fall off. There is enough resistance to keep that rim there, the tyre and the rim together. The next thing that comes into play though is painting. So you will have your printed rim and your printed tyre, and assumably painting both. So you need to then also make an allowance for the thickness of the paint on the rim, the thickness of the paint on the tyre, as well as any natural movement within. So you can see how it would be almost impossible for me to work out mathematically for every situation, not knowing the thickness of paint, the application, and whether you're going to hand paint it with a brush, whether it's going to be an airbrush, which will be a lot thinner. So what I sort of look at is what will work for you. And in this digital world in which we live in, I take a very analog approach to this. So again, if you are clever enough to be able to do that online, see it and be able to work it, all the power to you, because I have absolutely no idea. I do, as I said, I take an analog approach, and I'll sort of bring this camera in for me. Sorry, this is my face, can't do much about it. So what I've done is I have done some templates. So I have printed, as I said, 1/64 scale. So I have done everything from your Hot Wheels stuff. So I've taken some measurements, your tiny wheels, 9.3, 10.9, up to 12.6 and 14.6 millimeters. Now these are, I have done this for idlers. This isn't part of the range which we have. This is actually one of my downloads prior to actually making my own. So I have done everything from, let me see, the smaller one would be 9.5, 9.3, and probably realistically I don't have every millimeter or point millimeter, but up until about 12.6, which is about as big as I really want to go on those 1/64 scales, I have done a printout. All right, so this one's 4, but usually 5 in a row. And what I do is I get the tyre file. I should probably get my wording correct. And very basically, you'll see here, I've got a 9, a 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4. They're going up 0.1 increments of a millimeter. And the reason I did this is because I then have the tyre in multiple different sizes. Then went through with my rims, and I have done rims, much bigger range actually, up to your 10.4 millimeters. You'll sort of see that, and even the smaller ones, really, really tiny. That one's broken, but yeah. So I then take a very manual approach. So I know, for instance, with my rims, I airbrush. So I've got airbrush tyre black for these. I tend to paint the externals, trying to keep away from that internal mark. And then obviously the rims will be painted as well with the airbrush. So I don't really do a thick undercoat as such. Sometimes I'm now printing in grey resin versus more of a white, so that becomes the undercoat, and can paint straight over that. So again, I'm only dealing with maybe 1 or 2 layers of paint, but again, it's a very physical measurement. So if we take for instance, the 9mm, and I know that'll fit in the 11.4. It's, I think, at a stretch, would probably fit in 11.3. So as printed, that works. Now, a couple of things that you've got to look at is providing you're using the same resin, the same type of resin, the curing, the shrinking, and all those bits and pieces that can come into play. For instance, I'm printing both in the same, therefore the shrinkage and stuff would be the same. Quite often, what I'll do is I will grab a card, and this is where the templates work out really well. I've got the Hot Wheels Tirana. I pull this apart. Now with the template tyres, it actually works really well because you can grab whatever tyre size you like. And for instance, I've got a 10.4 and a 10 on either scale. And you can really place to go for the look that you're after. Obviously, a lot of tyres are different profiles and things as well. So if you're after like a 15-inch, tyre where it's got a thicker outside, you might have something that is a low profile where you want a sports tyre or a wider tyre. You can certainly do these, and these actually work out extremely well because you've got a visual representation to go, that looks pretty good. All right, so I'm going to do a 10.4 millimeter tyre. All right, you've got that measurement, that physical measurement that you're seeing, you're eyeballing, and it looks good. Now, I can't quite remember what I said before, but the 10.4, so I'm just going to quickly go through these and have a bit of a look. They're all too big. So we scale them back again. 8.5 is a little bit too big. So 8.4, 3, 2, 8.2. So an 8.2 now, I know, will work very well with the 10.4 tyre, with enough room to allow for the painting. So that is a very visual thing. We've got the tyre that works, that looks good on the car. You've got your rim template that you can then print at 8.2 millimeters. Very, very simple. So I'm going to get rid of my video because you don't need to see my face. And we can go into the idler file, which I mentioned before. We can do a 10.4. Then we can drop in the rim file that we have established was, if I can remember, I'm going to do that quick measurement again. It's 8.4. I just want to double check. 8.4, 8.3, sorry, 8.2. 8.2 is a magic number. All right. So we've got our rim. We're reducing that 8.2. I'm going to bring that over to the center and then rotate that back. Now the tyre was designed a little bit different to mine, to the wheel, I should say. So the wheel dimensions have a thickness of 4.1. So we go to the tyre and we can unlock the ratio. 4.1 reduces it that little bit, lock the ratio again. And that's, when you look in the digital world, is a correct fit. Now, to me, that gap looks massive, and that's why I can never eyeball it digitally. I think that is not going to work, but the proof is in the pudding. We've got the printed templates ready to go. We've done the test fit. It's going to look good. So when you separate these, obviously separate your tyre and your rim separately. The next thing actually I'll quickly touch base on is when you are doing the supports. I'm just going to do some auto supports. These tyres will actually print well this way, flat to the build face. I never thought it would, but it does. Depending on the scale, this is, as I said, it's very small, so you don't need a lot of supports. The rim, however, will do. Be right if I paid attention. All right, say for instance that. Now, between 35 and 45 degrees, I just do 45 as in this instance because it's there, it's automatic. And this self-populates the supports. Now, again, being a small rim, you don't have to worry too much about excessive supports because it is just naturally going to print. And this actually works really well. So you want the externals supported, the internal hub supported, and quite often I'll remove this little guy just so that I've got a proper printed surface without any abnormalities, as they can sometimes add those little bits. That's, when you look at these things together, is now print ready. Tyre and rim sized ready to go based on the build. Now obviously if it's a 1/43 scale, you would then do your templates in a much larger size, you know, the 120s as well, templates in a larger size. Now the beauty of the templates is sometimes you want a bigger rim or a bigger tyre. You might want a wider. You can do all these things just with that visual representation, which is really, really handy. We don't have templates set up on the Colts page. One day I would like to. It's just a little bit labor intensive across all the millimeters. However, simply drop in your file that you want. If you're dealing with one similar to me, like the idler or even the free tyres that we have, as I said, readily available on the Colts page, just scale it down. So for instance, you want a 10 millimeter. Then you might want, actually you will want, in this instance, say that to there, the free would be 10.1. Now you can see it can take some time when you start to move these things around, when you start, you know, creating these templates. It does take a little bit of time, but that little bit of time will save you so much in the long run. So give it a go. If you're running into any dramas or troubles, sing out. I'm happy to help where I can. But yes, as I said, in this digital world, maybe take an analog approach. Factor it in for your own printing, your own shrink rates, your painting, your glue, the whole kit and caboodle. Just take that manual approach and you'll be fine. I hope this helps. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Cheers.